Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is wealth. We want to remind you guys to share, and share again. Thank you guys so very much for being here with us. And here he is. Here's Dr. Rayner. How are you? Thank you for showing up and being here with us on this evening. Welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where true health is wealth. We're going to go around the table as we always do, and we're going to introduce our great panelists that are here. To the man who says I threaten him to be here on every Monday night, but he is always here on time. That's our very own Dr. James Miller. Dr. Miller.
Good evening, everybody. Just want to say that I'm happy to be on this forum this evening. Thankful to the congressman and to Nikki for making this possible. And my experience has been that there's a lot of wisdom distributed on these conversations. So we hope that everybody is ready to receive some wisdom tonight.
Outstanding. To the urologist of the stars, but he hates to have accolades. And I want everybody to make sure that you're listening to him on Saturday mornings. That's our very own Dr. Terry Mason. Dr. Mason.
Thank you, Nikki, for the introduction. And no, I'm like they say in the song in the church, I'm just glad to be in the service one more time. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm grateful to be here. And it's good to see my colleague and classmate, Dr. Loris Rayner, on the panel. We go back. He was my grandson's pediatrician, just a magnificent young man. And I'm grateful to see him, along with my other colleagues as well.
Outstanding. To my coworker and colleague who leaves us in the winter to go and be in that hot air, that's our very own Dr. Douglas Graham. Dr. Graham.
Thank you, Nikki. I'm a retired physician. I worked in the western suburbs for 30 years and spent 2 years working with the congressman in his office in Washington, D.C. It's a real honor to be here to work with these gentlemen and physicians. I'm going to try and answer your questions if I can.
Outstanding. To that weight loss guru, that family practice medicine doctor who really believes he's the Wolfgang Puck. That's our very own Dr. Tony Hampton. Dr. Hampton.
Well, always excited to be here. Nice to have a nice surprise, a friend, a mentor. Dr. Rayner, it's going to be good to, have you on the panel tonight. It's going to be awesome. So I'm really happy. I'm a family doc, obesity doc, and got some extra training in nutrition. Always happy to share messages of healing. So looking forward to tonight, guys.
Outstanding, simply outstanding. Well, we do have a new guest tonight, and it's Dr. Rayner. Now, don't get it twisted. It's like we were talking on Saturday. He's not the one who takes care of you at the end. That's the rest of his family. He's the one that tries to keep you from getting there. He extends it just a little longer. And that's our very own Dr. Rayner, our pediatrician that's here with us on this evening. Dr. Rayner, tell them a little something about you.
Thank you, Nick. Can you hear me? Everybody hear me?
Mm-hmm.
And Nikki pulled me at the Health Expo on Saturday, where we were in one of the discussions. And she said, "Oh, you got to become part. You got to become part." I said, "Well, Congressman Congressman Davis, I'd be honored. I'd be honored." He was a longtime friend of my father's, very much so. And my father probably mentored him to a degree. So a little bit, maybe, Mr. Davis, Congressman Davis, maybe to a degree.
A little bit. Yes, indeed.
But I was a pediatrician. Well, I still am a pediatrician. Practiced for 40 years on the south and southwest sides of Chicago. Last 25 years with the Advocate Medical Group, Advocate World, whatever they're called now. The last year and a half, I've been doing case reviews for Aetna, and liking it for a while, but not liking it like I did before, like I used to. Looking to get into some other things, maybe. Still think I have something to share and give, and so Miss Harvey came to me and asked me. I said, "I'd be glad to help." So. It's good to see you, Terry. I try to get in touch with you. Couldn't get in touch with you.
My number ain't changed.
I know. I sent you a bunch of messages, but it's cool. The lady urologist was excellent from Viola. She's excellent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Tony, always my best. And pleasure,
Oh,
pleasure meeting the other doctors as well.
all right. Linda Johnson is here with us, and she says, good evening, everyone. To Nellie Purnell King, who is here with us on this evening. She says, good evening to everyone. To Tina Hampton, who is here. James Brooks, who is here. That's Reverend James Brooks. Pastor Steve Spiller, that's here with us on this evening. I want to say hello to all of you. To Martha Perquette, who is here just as well, and she's saying good evening to everyone that is here and telling you thank you for this segment and these talks. To Johnny Diggs that's here, Brian Fondra, to Karen Yarbrough, to Kim Alexander Jackson, who was here with us just as well. Want to say thank you guys for tuning in and being here with us at this time. But to the man who makes this possible for us on every Monday night, to the gentleman who teaches us that true wealth is health, that's our very own Congressman of the Illinois 7th Congressional District, Congressman Danny K. Davis.
Well, let me thank all of you for showing once again. And of course, this is the Thanksgiving week. And I am wearing my Harold Washington sweater because it was this week that Harold passed away. And being somewhat of a historian, I try and remember some of the historical things that have gone on in Chicago and how those things that are historical relate to everything that we do today. So I'm feeling, kind of nostalgic a little bit in terms of remembering that period of time and what took place, how it took place. I was hoping to ask Dr. Rayner a question or two in terms of where he fits. The Rayner family, for those who may not know, is one of the most prominent Black families that have lived and been in Chicago for a long period of time, have been civically active and professionally active as long as I can remember being here, and certainly before I even came. Miss Hortense Rayner was one of the founders of the Martin Luther King Health Center, and I had the good fortune to work with her. And of course, Sammy Rayner, all of us who got involved in civic and political activity always remember Alderman Sammy Rayner, who was what we called an independent alderman, when what was known as the machine was hard and heavy. And I believe Sammy was alderman of the 6th Ward.
Yes,
and ran for Congress. Sometimes he'd say he was a Republican, but he'd always say he was independent. So Dr. Rayner, and of course, I also sat in the Rayner funeral home with Fred Hampton's body after he had been killed. My brother happened to have been a good friend of Trey Rayner's. And of course, we sat scared, acting scared, or whatever, but we sat there that night, the next night. And where do you fit in the Rayner clan? That's what I wanted to ask you.
Well, you talked about being historic. I had to pull on my Emmett Till shirt out because you talk about Harold Washington. We buried Harold Washington. Our funeral home did, and my grandfather. And I hope everybody does see Till because that was my grandfather who buried Emmett Till. So Trey Rayner is A. Rayner III. So he was the oldest of Sammy, my father's, the oldest of us. So he was the oldest. So Trey was the third, and I was actually the second Loris. I was named after Hortense's husband.
Okay.
I married Hortense's husband, Loris.
But she was
Since
a
I was second
grand.
Loris, but for second Loris, they didn't call me Deuce. They called me Deucey. So those that knew me growing up in the neighborhood called me Deucey. Everybody after high school, once I grew up, called me Deuce. Right, Terry?
Yes, sir.
So Trey was my oldest brother. He was in the funeral business.
Yeah.
All of that, there were 6 of us. My brother and 3 of my sisters are in the funeral home. 3 of them are still working in the funeral home. My other sister is a physician, and she's retired. She was medical director at Schwab for many
Oh
years.
my goodness. I Schwab was the rehabilitation hospital right there next to Mount Sinai.
Right. So Susan Rayner, that was my sister.
Well, Marty Bird ran that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And he was actively engaged and involved in the community because those were essentially Jewish institutions when they were built and when I first came to Chicago and got involved. So thank you very much for that. I just think it's important that people know some of the shoulders upon which we stand as a people and as a community. So I want to not only welcome you, but I want to thank you for being with us this evening.
My pleasure.
So we are ready to roll, Nikki.
Okay, want to say hey to Pastor Phil Jackson that's here with us just as well. Hey, Pastor Phil, how are you? We see you. Want to say hey to Shirley Ewan that's here, Tyree Sutton, Shirley Howard, Shirley Fields, Arlene Spencer, Patrice Rollins, Phyllis Murray, and Elaine Phillips. Thank you guys for tuning in with us. Thank you so very much. Well, Dr. Mason,
Yes, ma'am.
you said you had a great conversation about what's going on in a couple days. So what's going on in a couple days, Dr. Mason?
Well, we have the feast getting ready to happen. I think it's called Thanksgiving. I think that's what it's called. But I think that it's an opportunity for us to always remind our community, because of the increased amounts of deaths and morbidity, that is sickness, that we have. We always need to be, I think, reminded the role that food plays in this, and that there isn't a role for the most part that food doesn't play in both our sickness and in our health. So I just wanted to say to people, let's try to be a bit more moderate this year. I mean, I'm sure the turkeys never drank as much as the people do, and I'm not sure that in terms of the turkey, that's a whole nother situation. But I think we should spend more time being grateful for the fact that we're all still here. So many of us probably people that weren't even here this time last year to see the holiday. So I just want people to enjoy themselves in a responsible sort of way, and think about, if you're really thankful for something, how do you show it? How do you show it? What do you do? You don't drink more, you shouldn't eat more, but maybe there's something else that you should do. Maybe, to Congressman Davis's point, there's some service or something like that we need to think about. How can we better improve our communities? And it's not like you got to do it all by yourself, but sometimes finding other people. You're not the only one with a great idea sometimes. So I'll stop right there.
I'll chime in and just add that I kind of echo Dr. Mason's comments. There's ways to approach the holidays. I have conversations like this often with my patients, and I think it's always safe to do a moderate approach. But I think it's more important to do a moderate approach if you have a bag of medicines on the counter. So if you have a bag of medicines on the counter, and the last time your doctor checked your A1C and it was high, or the last time the doctor checked your blood pressure and it was high, it may make more sense for you to take a more moderate approach. You're going to get swept into the culture of what we do for the holidays, but you don't have to have 2 or 3 plates just because it's a special day of celebration. So I think the first thing is be thoughtful, because there is a higher rate of folk coming to the emergency room after the holidays. And why would you want to spend the days after the holidays in the hospital around people who are sick? So that's number one. Number two, I think this is the time of year when people get sick. So we don't want to forget that we need to use caution. I came home tonight. My kids are visiting from their university, and my son has a cough, right? So, but we get so comfortable with each other because we're family, but I'm not immune to my son's cough. So it would make more sense to suggest, which a dad does, maybe you should be wearing a mask. I know you're in the house, but when you're around your granddad and, you know, other old folk, I'm not quite there, Dr. Mason, so don't say nothing. But when you get around folks that's older, maybe we should use caution. I want people who are visiting family to do the same thing. If you know you're vulnerable, and especially if you got somebody in your family who may not be at their best, we need to make some choices. And one of those choices may mean that I'm not going to get around my family if I'm sick. So if you're thinking about visiting family, but you know you're ill, maybe we need to drop off a nice care package for you for the holidays. So I think we just want to be smart. We're human beings. We're not immune to anything. And I just want to just make us, just be thoughtful about the decisions we make.
Well, let me just ask Dr. Rayner. We also listen to good music during the holiday, and I thought of something that Marvin Gaye asked the question, who'll save the world? Who's willing to try?
Mhm.
Who'll save a world that is destined to die? Save the babies. What's happening with child health in our community? And what do we need to be looking at in terms of children's health?
I think it's in the news now. It's been in the news about the high incidence of a respiratory virus, especially RSV, that we're seeing in this population right now. It's like we have a triple dose of viral infections that are affecting our community. COVID, which fortunately right now is at the low level in Cook County, I think, in Chicago, isn't it? I think it's at a lower level of infection level, which is good for now. It's great. But the rate of RSV, which is a virus that has become very pronounced this time of year when which is not typical for it to come. It usually comes in much colder. I mean, it's cold. It usually comes in January, February, March. I mean, during the later part of the year, or the more involved part of winter. So it's been pronounced, but RSV's been around for several months. So I think the whole COVID has changed the whole paradigm of how we look at viral infections now, because that's what we're used to. I mean, COVID is supposed to be a flu virus, okay? And everybody thought flu virus goes away when the temperature changes. It didn't. So these viruses are getting minds of their own, and we just have to buckle down for them. I mean, a lot of these kids. I mean, right now, pediatric hospitals are being filled with their beds are being filled with RSV, respiratory virus patients, and flu. Flu is also becoming very prominent as well. So,
could you comment, Dr. Rayner, on like people hear these terms RSV, flu, and I think there's some understanding of that, but something like what's the difference between like bronchitis and bronchiolitis, right? You hear those terms. So could you just comment a little bit about what that difference is, ages wise and things like that?
Bronchitis is more in tune to older adults and older people. Bronchiolitis is really defined as a reactive airway disease or a respiratory difficulty, usually in kids under 2 years of age. So Anybody that's over anybody's 3-4 years old, it's really if they're having viral infections, they're probably having reactive airway disease, similar to what you would see with asthma. So the virus, what does is infects the respiratory system and gives symptoms very much like someone having respiratory difficulty like asthma. And these babies struggle. These babies are struggling.
I got a question for you too, Dr. Rayner. You know, we really do need to look at these things. And from where you stand, looking at childhood obesity and using a 10, 15, 20-year window of what you've been doing and what you've seen, where are we going with that? And are these children at higher risk for complications from these respiratory issues, as we saw with COVID?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. I'm probably the most disappointing thing that's probably seen since in my medical career is to see that kids are less healthy than when I first came on. There were no really obese kids when I first started in the early 80s. They're just, I mean, the size of the kids that I see now are just, and even at young ages. I mean, I had a 3-year-old weigh 120 pounds.
Wow. 3?
Yes. That's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And it was one of the most saddest things. I mean, it took 2 of us to get her on the table, up to the table examiner. And everyone in the family was obese. Not just a little bit either. So these kids, these families, these children struggle. And if you're not in your best health physically, you're not. It's gonna turn around and affect how your respiratory health is, and your respiratory health is going to be as well. So these kids are going to struggle. Those kids are struggling. We saw how COVID did with those people who had respiratory illnesses, smokers, chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, respiratory diseases like that. We saw the effect of those, and it's affecting our population. It's sad to see, but it's one thing that this is one more factor we have to work with to try to help get these kids and their families more healthy. We talked about one thing we're talk about it. Ms. Harvey and I will know about this because we talked about this at the Health Expo. Was not only you worry about the diet and nutrition during this time of year, but a lot of mental health problems occur this time of year too. The amount of mental illness, suicide, sometimes it's good when people get together. Sometimes it's not, because issues come up, things get remembered. It's a time for some people very solemn, very sad, because people are not, like you said before, people who are not going to be here before. And it's difficult for some people, and people struggle with it. And I think my colleagues will agree with me that the incidence of mental health concerns during this time of year is high. It's high, even in the rate of suicide. So,
how do families deal with the obesity problem in terms of just kind of knowing that the children, of course, many times it's the whole family, but that children need to do something to deal with that issue and that problem, because in all likelihood, it's going to create within them and for them, certainly not all, but many never reach the level of comfort that others reach in terms of just being self-okay, or knowing that I'm all right, and they're not all right because they are seriously overweight and don't know how to control it.
I mean, I think you get two experts here who, I mean, it trickles down. Kids don't become that way because that's the way they are. They become that way because that's what they see. That's what that's how they live. It's their lifestyle. and it's usually dictated by those that are around them, their parents and other adults. So the work that Terry, Dr. Mason, and Dr. Hampton are doing is so it becomes so much more important, because if the parents aren't going to know it, if the parents aren't going to live it, it's not going to trickle into the children. It has to come from up and to down, not from down to above. You know, the kids. I did whatever I could to try to get the kids to try to get their parents to change, but you know, I got a lot of pushback. There's one thing I learned from Dr. Mason too. It says that people are very funny about you talking about what they eat. I remember a conversation with Terry. Said people are very funny about what you got to be very careful when you talk to people about food. Okay, because it's a very it's just you know it's almost like sex. You know, it's a very sensitive subject. Okay, so you have to be very careful how you approach people about it, because they take it very personally. All right. We have to, we as physicians, we have to be very careful with the language we use around people who are obese. You know,
I just want to pick up on one thing that Dr. Rayner said, that we're dealing with a situation where children seem to be sicker today than what we used to see. And I think that we can probably just actually say that apply that to the general population, that we're seeing more people that are sick, and many people who maybe don't appear to be sick are sick. And so I think that when we start looking at these and trying to figure out some of the causes, and we've talked about diet and talked about some of the behavior a lot on this in this forum, and we really can't really look at the individual, because a lot of it is related to the circumstances, is related to things that our society is pushing now. And I think as we say that people are getting sicker, we can also begin to look at that people are eating more fast food. People are eating less wholesome and healthy food. And so people are getting calories, but they're not getting nutrition the way that they need. And so when you're sick, then you become less able to withstand things that may be infections and things that may not have caused as much of a problem in people that were not as sick. And so I think that we begin to look at that. We have to look at what do we do about the food supply? And part of it is obviously teaching people, because nobody is forcing it down your throat. But if that's what's available to you and that's what you know how to prepare, then you're sort of in a bad situation. And so we have to look at what do we do to how do we change that? I mean, it's obviously it's a very difficult and complex issue, but we really have to begin to focus on that if we're going to focus on trying to heal our people. Because the thing that we've been doing, in other words, as a person is obese and then they begin to develop a problem of obesity, and if the only answer we have is to add a pill, that's not really addressing the problem. It's just covering up something that may help for a while, but it doesn't fix anything. And so we really need to focus on fixing it.
I think one of the most striking things I learned in my obesity training was that when your body makes fat cells, and we call them adipocytes, you don't get rid of the adipocytes. You can't diet your way to less adipocytes. Now, what makes it particularly applicable to this conversation is that also means that if you create a lot of adipocytes when you're young, you'll have them for the rest of your life. So when you think about people who struggle with their weight, you kind of set a kid up for a lifetime of struggle, because those cells will only shrink, but they won't go away. They're like a balloon. So and then if you get triggered, you drive by the thing that triggers you, like the Dunkin' Donuts, that cell will then fill back up if you eat that donut. So it's really important for parents to understand, if I have, there's there's not often in life when you can impact the life of another human being, but you certainly can do it when they're in your house. So what you do is you create an environment where it's less likely for that to occur so that they won't have a life of struggle. So I think that's the first thing that kind of comes to mind, because when I learned this, I was just amazed. I also learned that a large percentage of our population, probably in a range of 20% of our children, are obese. Now, for the adults, we're looking at probably half the population, right? And I'm talking about by BMI standards, right? So Dr. Rayner saw in his practice how that impacted the kids, and we're just talking about America. Let's not talk about Latin American, African American kids. We might as well bring that number up much higher. So what we want to do is create an environment where we think about what kind of environment do you want to, what kind of culture do you want to create for your child? And it starts in the kitchen, right? So part of it is let's cook some meals in the kitchen together. Let's talk about where this food comes from. Let's think about spending less time on the computer or playing a video game, because when we do those things, we stop moving. Let's be comfortable eating some foods that maybe we haven't tried before, because we know these foods are better for us. So parents have the responsibility to train their kids in a way that they become curious. They look at food not as something you just go grab, but something you prepare, you put love into. And I think those types of things make a huge difference. But, I tend to live in a world where I kind of know what makes people larger. I was really pleased to see a colleague just today, and I literally looked at her face, and it was like, honey, I shrunk the kids. I mean, she went on a dietary pattern that's similar to what I recommend, and it was like magical. And I didn't really get a chance to ask more questions about what has this done for your life. But we don't have to be sick, guys. We just have to learn another way, and then teach our kids that new way. And then guess what? You're not just saving your child's life, your grandkids are going to benefit, and your great grandkids are going to benefit. So I think there's a lot of opportunity by doing that.
I would say to that too, a couple of things. Number one, when I was growing up, my mother had a very simple saying. And that saying was, everybody that eats needs to know how to cook. And so in our family, all 10 of us had to learn how to cook. And we cooked in a way that, was consistent with the way that we were brought up, with more beans and greens. And, we had some fried chicken, but that wasn't often. And so we don't today, people are lured. I think that many of us are misled. And I'm not a real big person, especially with my own. I've had my own issues. Dr. Rayner will probably remember, but I had my own issues with weight at one time because, not that long ago, I was almost 250 pounds. And now 156. But it didn't happen with diet. What you have to do is change to an eating pattern that you can maintain. Diets don't work. What we need to do is and then you need to learn how to cook. Because my mama had a stand and said, everybody to eat need to know how to cook. Everybody. And everybody needs to learn. Because what you want is, if you get to the right level of eating, your body will self-correct. It will just self-correct. And I'm not going to go through it in detail here. I can if you want. But that happened to me. I lost that weight not because I was dieting. I wasn't even trying to diet. That wasn't it at all. I just decided I was going to eat this way, and I just continued eating that way. And the body corrected itself. And that's what we need to do, is get out of this whole idea, because a diet is a built-in failure. Why? Because a diet has usually a beginning, and then you set some sort of target at the end. And most people, not everybody, but most people, if they get to their target, many of them, at least the data shows, that will put the weight back on. Large percentage of them will regain that if they haven't learned how to eat to maintain the healthy weight that they've finally gotten themselves to. And they can learn to eat the things they like, some of the stuff they like to eat without gaining all the weight back again. It can be done. But right now, they have so much competition with industry. 70% of our meals now are prepared outside of our house, according to one statistic I read.
Wow.
And that means if somebody else is in your kitchen making your food, you don't know what you eat. So we need to take charge of going back, and it's not expensive. People tell me that all the time, and I'll shut up after this. It's not expensive. It's expensive when you're eating out all the time. It's expensive when you're doing this yo-yoing and your A1C is going out of control and all. That's expensive. You know, that, but buying that medication that you may need and all the other stuff, that's expensive. But the most expensive thing are the days that you're taking away from your time here on the planet.
Indeed.
Well, we don't want to remove any days from the planet. Virginia Knight says, what? She can't believe that you weighed over 200 pounds. Audrey J. Cox is once again giving great kudos for just being able to be a part of this conversation, listening to the great feedback that's given. The educator extraordinaire from Orr High School, Dr. Stewart, she's here with us. She says, and she's listening. Well, so what is a person to do with this turkey? What do you do? How do you eat off a smaller plate? I mean, how do you reprogram yourself? How do you reprogram your children? I mean, the congressman brought up some great things about the health of our kids. How do we reprogram this?
I'll let he's the pediatrician. I'll let him start with that.
It's hard because it has to come from above, and it's all about what Dr. Hampton and what Dr. Mason do. It's all about not learning. You're not going to know. It's like anything in life. You're not going to learn anything unless you know the background behind it and have knowledge of it. You know, and that's true of diet. Very similar to Dr. Mason. I was a snack food person. I was a big snack food person. And once I learned that, plus I had to become what kind of example was I going to be to my patients, trying to talk to them about what they should be doing when I wasn't doing it myself. You know, like the blind leading the blind. And so I did, and a lot of kudos I take from Terry, because I took from the information from him. I didn't diet either. I just ate smarter. I learned about portions. I mean, my wife has learned to share meals with us when we do go out. I like nice dining. I do like to go out, but we'll share a portion. We'll share an entree. Okay, we won't do. You know, we don't. Most times we don't bring stuff home because we've eaten enough. I think, you know, we've all grown up with that old idea about, people starving. I mean, with us, with my generation, there are people starving in China. You know what I mean? You know, later on people say we're starving in Africa. Okay, but they use that expression. And we were always taught also, Terry, you agree, to clean your plate. And, and not to eat when you're full. Okay, when you're full, you've eaten too much. It's too late. You have to learn to eat enough. Okay, and that's what it is. There are portions. Education talks to us about the portions of the amount of food that we really need to eat. Because we eat too much. We eat too much. And that's the bad thing about Thanksgiving meals like this, group of family meals, is because there's food laid out in front of you, and figure your eyes are bigger than your stomach, and you tend to eat more. All right. So part of eating right and watching what you eat is developing a discipline. You have to want to develop that discipline. If you're not going to have that discipline, it's not going to carry over to your kids. It's not going to carry over into how you cook. It's not going to carry over how you serve. It's not going to carry over how when you go out to buy things. You're not going to get the small size of anything. You know, the worst thing they ever did, I remember another conversation with Terry talking about, was to supersize everything. The supersize stuff wasn't supersized. Just get one little. Remember, look, a thing of French fries from McDonald's. Now you can supersize everything. Supersize drinks. You know, not one patty, but 2 and 3. Okay, this is where we've gone. So it is about discipline, and it has to be learned behavior. It really does, and it's not. It isn't. And like I said, Terry, Dr. Mason struggled. I struggled with it for a while, but once I realized and I saw the rewards of it, I lost 40 pounds. I lost 40 pounds over a couple of years, and it was just by eating right. And that's a discipline that has to be taught from above down to our kids. That's why it's been important the work that Dr. Hampton and Dr. Mason do when they direct it mainly toward adults, because then it's got to come back down to the kids.
Yeah, and it's very complicated, Nikki, in that like one of the things that, like, my hope is for large health systems like Advocate Aurora, where I work, create a way for a busy doctor to point people who need help in the right direction, because everybody is different. Some people I find need a handout, eat this, don't eat that. Other people need a coach, because what I said earlier about how the adipocytes, they don't do anything but shrink. So since they're predisposed to growing again, I may need a coach to help mentor me and to have an accountability partner, because I'm going to struggle. There's nobody that's been up and down with their weight who's not going to struggle, right? Then we need our clinicians need to be problem solvers. So part of it is to know who needs help, and you point them to that help. Maybe they got a processed food addiction. Maybe they need to be in a weight management program, which we're starting within our health system. But we also need clinicians who know how to talk to people in a way that honors their struggle. And once we get that, it's almost like that stuff we've all learned with motivational interviewing. And we've learned how to, like, what stage of change are they in? Are they in that, contemplative stage, pre-contemplative stage? Are they, at a stage where they're ready to take action? And once you kind of know where they are, you can then frame your discussion in a way that honors that stage. Now, for example, if I have a young lady in front of me who's in the middle of a divorce, her focusing on her dietary pattern is probably not going to be her priority. So what I try to do is give her resources to support her through her divorce, whether it's a therapist or whatever. And then once the dust settles, then we can start focusing on her dietary changes. So I think we have to meet people where they are, build rapport, be empathetic, tell them that the struggle is real, they're gonna struggle. And then we create health systems that have tools in place to help people at their different levels of change. And I think that's really what I found to be effective. I have found people, they come to the clinic, years of struggle, years of not really following the advice that I've been sharing. And then something happens, a light bulb occurs, or maybe a family member gets ill and it wakes them up, but so it's a combination of having the right knowledge, having the right resources, being empathetic, and walking with people. Because if you live in a world where most people are not at their ideal body weight, then you're going to struggle, because you're surrounded by what has now become norm. And I think we want to honor people who are on that journey, because if I meet somebody for the first time and they weigh like 400 pounds, I may not have known when I met them that they weighed 500 pounds a year earlier, and that they've made a remarkable journey. So I think it's important when we're in front of people that we honor that. And I think if we do that and not make, and just understand the journey, I think that we'll do much better in society.
Outstanding. Well, Linda Johnson said it starts with the parents, cooking and setting examples. Tynette asked the question. She says, Dr. Rayner, I hear so many different things. Eat breakfast, don't eat breakfast. Should children eat breakfast? And how big of a problem is it that our kids tend to have breakfast of corn chips and juice.
Well, sometimes for some families, it's easier for them to buy some of these items because it's for them it's inexpensive. It's inexpensive. Orange juice, juice is, and then most people aren't drinking juice; they're drinking Sunny D and all kinds of other flavored beverages. They're not real. It's not most of them not drinking 100% juice because 100% juice is a little more costlier. So um, they're not eating those kind of things. Um, it's important. I mean, there are different. You can be different things about with the idea of 3 meals a day, and my colleagues can comment on it. But to me, I cannot start a day without having something in the morning. And plus, you remember breakfast by definition is you're breaking a fast. You know, you're talking about 12 hours. In most cases, 12 hours or more since you probably had a meal from the last time you've eaten. So your body your body needs that sustenance that you get first thing in the morning. And so having something for breakfast, um, something simple and nutritious. I mean, some nutritious like fruit, uh, cereal with. I have my cereal with and I'm talking about I have my Cheerios with bananas and soy milk, almond milk. Okay, that works for me. Okay, I know Terry is a big blend. There's a blended meal in the morning. Okay, so you has to do something that works for you. But breakfast, it's important to have something because if you don't eat breakfast, you'd be surprised how many kids don't eat lunch either. So to not start the day with some type of nutrient, because you have to have that jump start that kind of gets in the morning. So you have to eat something first thing in the morning. It's without it's a given. I don't know Terry and Tony how they feel about that, but
Yeah, I think for kids, most of our children, at their rapid growth rate and their accelerated activity levels, they absolutely um, are probably going to need to have multiple meals throughout the day to sustain them. So I think that's a logical conclusion, and that's a conclusion I would make. I think adults have to base it on their individual needs, and so in the choices they make. I mentioned this last time at our last discussion, but your meter, if you're a diabetic, will let you know if what you ate is going to serve you. So if you eat something and an hour later and maybe 2 hours later you see a spike in your blood sugar, that's probably not the best way to start your day. So I personally have a lot, me personally, I'm an intermittent faster. A lot of my patients are, and they only get to that point once they adopt a dietary pattern that makes them feel full. So one of the things I tell patients is that there is something, there are foods called high satiety foods. So if anybody watching this wants to look that up, just say high satiety foods, diet doctor. And on that website, they'll give you a list of foods that make you feel full, right? So an example would be asparagus, for example. It has a super high satiety score. So if you have your protein with asparagus, and the proteins tend to be high in satiety scores as well, you're probably going to be full. Um, that's number one. Number two, a lot of people who adopt dietary patterns where they don't eat foods that spike their sugar and goes down, just like Chinese food does, they have more level numbers, so that when they wake up in the morning, they're generally not hungry, so they may just hydrate. And then around 10, 11, or 12, they'll eat a nice meal and maybe have dinner. So I think it depends on the individual, but very few people, so I'm a guy that wakes up and I'm not hungry, right? Imagine, but let me tell you what happens when I take a cruise. If I take a cruise and I eat the things I'm not traditionally eating at home, by the third day, I'm going to wake up starving. That's just how the body works. Your body will quickly flip from a mode where it's using fat for fuel and not being hungry, to where it's got to have that fuel if you switch to a fuel that requires you to graze all day. So I think you have to listen to your body, understand what high satiety foods are, and then make a decision based on what you feel is best for you. There is no rules about this. I don't think anybody has to eat a certain way, but my body tells me what's best for me. And for me, fasting in the morning is best for me. For my patients who like to eat breakfast, who are not children, I absolutely support that as well.
Well, Doug, you guys have been quiet. You and Dr. Miller, like to hear from you guys and see what you're thinking about.
Well, you know, Thanksgiving is one of my very favorite meals, but I'm thinking about the lessons from Dr. Tony, and that means I got to be careful about stuffing. I got to be careful about cranberry sauce. And at the end of the meal, I have to be very careful about the pies because I really love pies. So that means I can have a smaller plate, smaller sizes, and be attention to what you're talking about. If you're full first, not to overeat.
Where did Dr. Miller go? Did he?
Yeah.
Dr. Miller was having some tech difficulties, and I think the same thing just happened to the congressman. But I should be skinny. I don't like turkey. That's an angry bird. I don't like that bird. I don't eat that bird. He's angry. He's an angry bird that beats up everybody. I'm not fond of the pies. I really don't like stuffing. I don't know. You're right. It starts from up above, and we've just got to figure out what works best for us so we can know what works for our bodies, but we have to make the changes. I thank you guys so very much for all of the great things that you do. And as always, we're going to go around this table and we're going to ask that question. You're until next Monday. So, Doug, we're going to start with you. Until next Monday, what do you want to leave the viewers with until next Monday? And I see Doug had some issues and kind of dropped off. And the congressman made it back, so we're okay. So, Tony, you're until next Monday. What's your until next Monday?
Yeah, I'm just excited about the holidays. I think people just need to pause and reflect and understand what the holidays are for. I remember when I was a vegetarian / vegan about 10 years ago, and I was that way for 8 years, and I had to literally it was very difficult to get my family on to create a meal that would be up to that kind of standard. So I would sometimes go to my family gatherings with a full belly and use that time to interact with my family. So use this time to connect with your family, make sure they know you love them, and just be present. The food is definitely part of it, and I know that's how we celebrate. But I really think it's important that we be present and enjoy each and every day, because every day is so precious. So I'm really excited about the holidays. It's not often that the doctor gets days off. So, just having a day off to me is a win. But I just want everybody to enjoy that day, be present, and don't make it just about food. Make it about connecting with your family.
All right. Doug, you're until next Monday?
Well, I'm just going to enlarge what Dr. Tony said, is I think Thanksgiving is perhaps the warmest and the most social of the events. But there isn't the same issue of gift giving and gift receiving as there is with Christmas. It isn't as commercial. And my thought is, I'm going to be very careful when I walk in, not to reach for the nuts and the chips. And not start that way, but start with saying hello to people and appreciating that they're there.
All right, Dr. Miller, you're until next Monday.
I think he's having some trouble.
I think Dr. Miller is still frozen. Dr. Mason, you're until next Monday.
Well, let me just begin by saying that my upbringing has been such that these made up days called holidays have less significance for me than they probably do for a lot of other people, because they're made up days. They're not real. And so they are all around merchandising and things of that nature. So I don't get as caught up in that as a lot of people do. All of them, including Christmas and everything else. Because I believe every day you wake up healthy is a holiday for you. And you should treat it that way, that you were given the gift of life for that day. So I think that we have to not be tricked because of what they've done with commercializing all this stuff, creating creating all this artificiality around what love means and what attention means. I agree with Dr. Tony that you spend kids spell love Time. That's how you spell love, Time. And you need to spend time with people, not just on a holiday, but all the times. And so I will not eat any more than I normally eat on any day, on any of these days, because I just don't think that makes sense for me anymore. I did earlier when I didn't know any better, but now that I know better, I do better and I don't do it. And so that's it for me. But everyone else enjoy the holiday in the manner in which that works for them. But that's what I do.
All right. Audrey Jaycock says, Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. God bless you and your families. Very thankful for these conversations. Dr. Rayner, what would you like people to remember until next Monday?
And I'm echoing pretty much like Terry. To me, every day is Thanksgiving. Every day is Thanksgiving. We don't have to have a special day to give glory to God and say thank you. I wake up in the morning to say thank you to have another day, move forward. So designate a special day for Thanksgiving. It's ceremonial. It is ceremonial. And it's commercial. We hear about how many people driving, how many people are flying. Okay, how much Thanksgiving cost this year versus last year. All the things that go along with it. It all seems to kind of be concentrated from Halloween down, if you really think about it. And that's a whole nother story talking about Halloween. Anyway, it's a whole other story. But every day is the day of Thanksgiving for me, and it is a time of reflection. But it's a special time because I do remember. And the hardest thing for me is those who aren't there to share it. So being able to really take hold of my children, who one is coming from San Francisco, and the other one lives a block and a half away,
Really awesome.
and my two grandchildren I get to enjoy now. Okay, that makes it special. But I don't have to have Thanksgiving to have time and spend with them. It's a nice gathering point for all of us to come together. And I get more excited with the sides than I do about the main courses. They tend to be more interesting anyway. Turkey, ham, fish. Yeah, that's not exciting. Not to me. Not to me. What you can do with some sweet potatoes and some beans, that's exciting. Some greens, that's exciting to me.
Turnips and collards.
Yep. Collards and cabbage together.
All right, my man. I'm gonna cook them tomorrow.
All right. Want to remind you guys to meet us on next Monday, right here, same bad time, same bad station. I'm a turnips and turnip bottom girl, but I like ham. I do. I'm sorry. Well, Congressman, take us home. Gobble, gobble, everybody. Congressman, take us home. Congressman? I think he froze.
Yep, he's froze too. He's froze.
Yep. All right. Well,
there you
Congressman,
go.
there you go. Congressman, take us home.
Yeah, I'm always grateful for everything. I mean, I like the expression of being grateful. I like the idea of thank you. I think I say it at least 25 or 30 times a day. Just kind of thank you in the course of interacting. Of course, we did manage to give away 500 turkeys on Saturday, and it was wonderful in terms of just being able to give those to people who came. But I also had breakfast this morning at one of the upscale hotels down on Michigan Avenue, the Peninsula. I didn't know how to get in there. With 3 African American males. I don't know if these guys were different or special. One was a mayor, one was a corporate executive, and the other was a business guy. And I just couldn't help but notice what everybody ordered for breakfast. One guy had some avocados, some fruit. I had a bowl of oatmeal and some berries and a cup of coffee. One had 2 poached eggs and some toast, but he didn't eat the toast. He ate some yogurt. And the other one had something similar to that. Nobody had any pancakes. Nobody had any sausage and fried eggs. And I don't know if that means that they're learning or if we're learning or what. But I managed to get through the bowl of oatmeal and the berries and didn't have anything else. And that was it. I mean, I didn't even have any toast. I mean, I said, oh, I couldn't believe it. So I think if we practice enough, we learn. I believe that if we try enough, we learn. And so I want you all to keep teaching. And if you keep teaching, we will keep learning. When I used to teach, the teacher trainers used to say, if teaching is taking place, some learning will take place. And you all just keep teaching and we'll keep learning. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And I'll end my comments. We always were taught these little sayings. And of course, we learned before Thanksgiving, we learned to say, over the ribbon, through the woods, to grandmother's house we go. The horse knows the way to carry the sleigh over the white and drifted snow. Over the ribbon, through the woods, my grandmother's cap I spy. Hooray for the fun, is the pudding done? Hooray for the no sugar added pumpkin pie. So have a wonderful evening and do all right.
Night.
Thanksgiving is coming. Thank you all.